What's up everyone, I'm Gaming Dad and welcome to part 2 of the battle between pre-builds and customs for beginners. I'll be sharing with you the 7 tips I used when selecting compatible components. Now, although it seems like a daunting task to pick the right parts, it's not all that bad because we have access to Google obviously, where you can practically find everything you need. But even so, I'm going to make it even easier just for you, so let's jump right in. First to make an appearance is the easiest of them both when picking parts, and that is pre-builds, because essentially you only need to decide on what you need in terms of a CPU and GPU, because it is pre-built, all ready for you to go. Now, no need to check compatibility, just check how good that particular build is with certain tasks. For example, some online sites like Cyberpower UK will have a guide or rating to say how good your rig is. But if there isn't a rating, head online and search for a PC benchmark checker, or use the one I use, which is called userbenchmark.com. No sponsorship, just like the ease of the site, and I'll touch on that in a bit of a moment. One thing to keep in mind when buying a pre-built, especially buying from a domain who aren't exactly heavily PC or gaming involved, is that they will make the CPU and GPU the showstoppers and cheap out in other ways. So although your main components are top notch, the rest of the rig won't be, or you won't know what they are. For example, this site, it has great prices and financial options, but you don't know what your RAM is, nor what your motherboard or your power supply is, which means the most likely won't be anything special and essentially not future-proof, which is a bit of a worry when you're spending this much money. So unless you use an online source like the previous site we saw, which allows you to customize the rig before buying, just be careful. But even then, as seen in my previous video, like in part 1, it still will cost you a lot more money than if you just buy the part yourself and build it yourself, which leads me on to custom builds. With custom builds, you will have more control over every detail and component in your PC, which is great because you can make it future-proof or even as mad looking as you want with RGBs. Although this means more research and more thinking about compatibility, don't worry, I've got you covered with 7 simple tips to help you out. 1. Start configuring your rig by choosing your CPU first. Depending on what CPU you go for will alter your motherboard and thus alter your entire build. For example, an AMD Ryzen 7 CPU is an AM4 socket and therefore is only able to be inserted into an AM4 socket motherboard. And then an Intel i7, which is on the other end of the scale, can only be inserted into a motherboard with an LGA 1151 socket. But don't worry, you can find out all your information of your socket types and everything from the manufacturer's page or anywhere on Google, and it's the same for the motherboard. Just look out for socket and it will tell you. 2. Keep note of your motherboard connections. So does it have a 24-pin power connector? How many RAM slots does it have? The size of the RAM it can hold? The size of the motherboard? All important information to keep at hand whilst you choose the rest of your parts. 3. When choosing your case, make sure you look out for more than just if it has RGB or not. Look for dimensions, case type, fan size capabilities, GPU clearance, and most importantly, what size motherboard it can hold, because you don't want to buy a case and a motherboard to only find out you can't fit it in, especially with the costs of some high-end cases and motherboards out there. But the easiest and safest way to go is find a mid-tower case that is capable of holding the most popular motherboard sizes: ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX, or large, medium, and small. 4. When choosing a power supply, or PSU, do not cheap out. Go for a rated and known brand, which is either bronze, silver, gold, or platinum rated, and essentially 80 plus and above. This means the components inside are at a good standard, which is vital for any PC build. 5. Check connections between your PSU, motherboard, and GPU. These are the main connections that must be made, so check everything fits and has the right connections. Again, you can find this all out in your product specs and the manufacturer's website. For compatibility, use the interweb, or Google. Almost everyone has internet access and knows of Google, so the easiest thing to do is type in PC part compatibility and then find a credible or high-rated site like PCbenchmarks.com. Type in your components and you can then see if they are compatible or if there's anything wrong, and it'll flag it up for you, and how well it will run as a gaming unit and desktop for work. It rates it super funny and super weird. It goes from a tree trunk all the way to UFO or submarine. So check it out. I'm sure you'll love it. It's super easy to use, and you can test it alongside your old system or any other systems by doing a comparison, which is the top right corner of that site. And finally, number 7, double check everything. Have your notes with all your components on and check it all once, twice, and 3 times a lady. There's nothing worse than buying something and realizing that it can't be used because you didn't check the power connections or any little bits and pieces and it's not compatible or doesn't work. So double check before you buy and double check before you put it all together. Power connections, socket types, sizes, and even output ports. You want to know everything because at the end of the day, you're not going to be plugging in just a monitor. You're going to plug in your peripherals, maybe an external mic that might be USB, or it might be one of those fancy, is it FX or FXT mics? You know, mixers. You can buy RGB lighted mats, lighting for your streams and review videos if you're going to do YouTube. You want to know everything because there's going to be more than just a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse plugged into this PC. So get double checking and know everything. Well, that's it, guys. That is my guide for buying parts for your custom PC, as well as some pointers to be aware of when buying a pre-built system. I hope it helps you out and I hope it makes sense. But if it doesn't, or you're still not sure, there is one more route to take, and that is copying your favorite pre-built specs and buying the parts yourself to build. You know the parts are sure to be compatible as it's being sold online, as long as it's a credible site, of course, and you still get that building experience as well as that rewarding feel when your system posts without errors for the first time. And if worse comes to worse and it doesn't post, you know it's on the build side of things rather than worrying about the parts not matching. So just double check your PC and everything will be fine. Super simple, super rewarding. Nice? Sounds fun. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for part 3, where I'll be going over my experiences whilst building my custom PC and how hard it really is to do as a complete beginner. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep on gaming.